On the morning of December 6, 1975, the quiet calm of Teaneck, New Jersey was shattered. Inside a modest home in a middle-class neighborhood, 5 members of one family were found murdered in what would become one of the most disturbing and mysterious cases in the state's history. In a town known for progress and peace, how could something so horrific take place? Who would target a respected family in such a vicious and calculated way? And why? This is the story of the Diggs family murders. Hello friends, my name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders. In 1975, Teaneck, New Jersey was a suburban township in Bergen County just across the George Washington Bridge from Manhattan. It was known for its progressive stance on civil rights. In fact, in 1965, Teaneck became the first town in the United States with a white majority to voluntarily desegregate its public schools. By the mid-1970s, Teaneck was a diverse middle-class community with a strong sense of civic pride. But like many American towns during that decade, it wasn't untouched by the larger currents of social change and uncertainty. Crime was on the rise across the country, and tensions, both racial and economic, were simmering just below the surface in many suburban communities. Wesley Diggs, age 40, was a former electrical engineer with the New York Board of Education and professional saxophone player. Originally from Harlem, he owned 4 taverns in his old neighborhood: Diggs's Den, the Yardbird Suite, Roger's Pub, and the Cafe Lounge. Described as motivated and hardworking, he often worked 18-hour days. His wife Jean, 39, worked part-time at Stern's department store and sold Avon on the side. They'd been married 19 years and had 4 children. Audrey, 17, was a senior at Teaneck High School. She played on the girls' basketball, volleyball, and softball teams. Allison, 16, a junior at Teaneck High School, worked at the local Acme supermarket after school and on weekends. She was artistic and had an interest in design, although many believed she would end up being a model. Wesley Jr., age 12, was a 7th grader at Thomas Jefferson Junior High School and dreamed of being a race car driver. The youngest, Roger, age 5, was in kindergarten at Washington Irving School. Described by teachers as extra bright, he had just recently been allowed to cross the street by himself. The family lived in a well-kept 10-room stucco and red brick home at 266 Carlton Terrace, in a quiet middle-class neighborhood of Teaneck. They had purchased the home 6 years earlier, becoming one of the first black families to move into what had long been an all-white area. Concerned with the crime and drug use near the taverns, Wesley had recently decided to get out of the bar business. On Saturday afternoon, December 6, 1975, Wesley returned home from his New York City taverns around 4:38 p.m. He pulled his new Chrysler into the drive and parked behind Jean's 1973 Valiant. Entering through the back door, he walked through the kitchen and went upstairs to his second-floor bedroom. He noticed there were no lights on except for one in the basement, and he wondered where Jean and the children were. He flipped on a hallway light and glimpsed Audrey apparently asleep on Wesley's bed. He went to his room, took off his coat, put down his money bag, and then went back to wake Audrey. But Audrey didn't stir. He noticed reddish-brown spots everywhere. He ran back to his room to call for help. The line was dead. Going down the hall to Roger's room, he flipped the light switch. The light didn't come on. In a panic, he rushed downstairs and tried the kitchen phone. It, too, was dead. He bolted out of the house. Remembering that neighbor Ed Murphy had a daughter who was a nurse, he pounded on the Murphys' door, shouting, "My daughter's been hurt." After calling the police, Mrs. Murphy and her 2 daughters rushed with Wesley back to his home, finding daughter Audrey deceased. While waiting for police, they investigated the basement rec room, where Wesley found Jean, fully clothed, slumped against a wall, shot once in the head and once in the chest. Police arrived to find Roger and Wesley Jr. deceased in an upstairs bedroom. Wesley was on the bed dressed in a t-shirt and jeans, and Roger, dressed in pajamas, was in bed. Both had been shot multiple times in the head. Daughter Allison would be found an hour later in her attic bedroom. She was fully clothed, sitting up in her bed, and her TV was still on. She had been shot twice in the head. It would later be determined that Audrey had been shot 3 times in the head and once in the back. 26 shell casings would be found at the scene. It was determined that 23 came from one firearm and 3 from another. Neighbors reported nothing unusual. Friends of the family and patrons of all 4 taverns were also questioned. Employees described Wesley as a beautiful man, a good man to work for, and reported that there had been no trouble at any of the taverns, and he had no enemies that they were aware of. Patrons described all 4 taverns as respectable, neighborly places, catering primarily to young adults. Witnesses placed Audrey, a member of the Teaneck High School girls basketball team, at the school gym at around 9:30 Friday night. A parcel delivery man slipped a package between the front doors at 11 a.m. on Saturday when he got no answer to his knocking. Later, a friend of one of the boys stopped by to play, but left when he got no answer. Police believe the family knew the assailant, as there was no forced entry, no sign of struggle, no sexual assault, and no sign that any of the family attempted to flee. Robbery was ruled out, as nothing appeared to be missing. With no other motive, investigators theorized that revenge, likely tied to Wesley's business dealings, was the most likely motive. There were jurisdictional issues from the start. The Diggs family lived in New Jersey, but Wesley's business ventures were in New York. Bergen County was unable to get needed assistance from New York City because of short staffing brought on by the city's financial crisis. New Jersey Governor Brendan T. Byrne ultimately directed the state police to provide the needed assistance. Wesley was intensely investigated. He admitted to being at a political fundraiser with several hundred people in Harlem with a girlfriend the night of the murders and spending the night at her apartment in the Bronx. The following morning he met with his accountant, then picked up the receipts from his bars before heading back to Teaneck. He insisted that Jean knew of his affair, although she was not pleased. Individuals in the Harlem neighborhood who were interviewed also reported that Wesley's affair was widely known. Police were able to substantiate his alibi. Wesley would take a polygraph test, which he passed, and he would be cleared of any involvement. Until his death, he would grapple with the guilt that he was not at home the night his family was killed. Funeral services for Jean and the children were held at the Presbyterian Church of Teaneck, officiated by Reverend Robert Chase, with 1,000 relatives and friends in attendance. They were laid to rest at Washington Memorial Park in Paramus, New Jersey. A scholarship fund was established at Teaneck High School in memory of the children, and a memorial garden was planted. Wesley sold the Carlton Terrace home in 1976 and later sold all 4 taverns. He purchased 2 stationery stores in Harlem and moved to Manhattan's Upper East Side. He died of a heart attack in 1987 and was laid to rest beside his wife and children. The Diggs family murders remain a chilling reminder that even in places where progress and community seem strong, darkness can still find its way in. Nearly 5 decades have passed, and the brutal loss of 5 lives continues to echo through time, leaving behind a trail of grief, outrage, and confusion. As with many cold cases, the silence left in the wake of this crime raises questions that may never be answered. But remembering this family and revisiting the story with care and clarity matters. It keeps the victims' names alive, and sometimes, in retelling these stories, new eyes find old clues. Justice delayed is not always justice denied. If you have any thoughts or theories about this case, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.